Hey, subscribe to my channel. I love you.
Card Kaizoku.
This video is sponsored by gumgum.gg. Discover Western OP10 lists and Eastern OP11 lists on gumgum.gg. Updated daily. Be the first to see decks for new leaders as they emerge. With over 1000 deck lists per set, gumgum.gg has all the top strategies as soon as they drop. This video is sponsored by Card Market, Europe's largest online marketplace for trading card games. Hey, so today I want to talk about the upcoming block rotation system coming to the One Piece card game in 2026. Bandai has recently released a video on their Japanese channel going over the details of it. It's a pretty big structural change to how the formats will work moving forward, but I think it's worth breaking down what it actually means, what's good about it, and what might raise some eyebrows. So some of this may be things you already know, but they also confirm some things we had questions about in the video, so let's just break it down. So starting in April 2026, Bandai is introducing two formats to the game, Standard Regulation and Extra Regulation format. So Standard Regulation is a rotating format that will only include cards from the most recent 3 years of sets. And each year, the oldest block of sets will rotate out. So to put that into context, from April 2026 to 2027, the legal sets will be block 2, 3, 4, and 5. Block 1 will rotate out. And then from April 2027 to March 2028, it shifts one more block. So it's 3, 4, 5, and 6 will become standard. The idea behind it is to keep the meta fresh and more balanced over time. At the same time, there will still be formats where every card remains legal. And that's what's being called now the Extra Regulation format. So if you're the kind of player who wants to use your old favorites forever, this format isn't going anywhere. Since I never gave my personal opinion on it, I think this was something that is kind of needed for the game, for the health of the game, and for it to continue to grow. I personally don't mind a block rotation system, but I do possess empathy, and I can empathize with people who may not prefer that cards get rotated out. So now, why do this? Well, Bandai says it's to address power creep. They mentioned if left unchecked. As an example, things could get to a point where like being a 6k base leader is like the standard. It's the norm to keep up with the meta. Now, I don't really understand this argument because if power creep is an issue, well, power creep has been happening despite the rotation system. I'm not sure how rotating older, weaker sets that aren't in meta anymore would fix power creep. Yeah, like sure, broken cards will eventually rotate out, right? 8 cost Gekko at some point will be out of the meta from rotation, as an example. But those broken cards would have been standard legal for like 3 years, and then they would have needed to print newer cards to compete with those broken cards anyways, right? They needed to print answers to 8 cost Gekko gets rotated out. Those new answers to Gekko are now like what's broken in the meta for the next 3 years. So yeah, that's one thing I didn't really understand personally. Now, this one I do completely understand. New players gain the most from this rotation system. This makes jumping into the game a whole lot easier, right? They don't have to track down like 3+ years of older sets of stuff that's not even being reprinted anymore just to build something out viable to play in standard. Especially given how spotty reprints have been so far, this could lower the barrier to entry quite a lot. But I've seen sentiment from day one players feeling a little jaded that newer players don't have to go through the growing pains of like having to pay $30 for a starter deck queen or $80 for 8 cost Katakuri due to like product scarcity. But this is kind of gatekeeping behavior. I kind of shy away from that. I think it's just overall better for the game in general if new players can get into the game a lot more quicker and easily. And then of course from a business sense, this makes complete sense, right? Let's say you have a veteran player versus a new player. The veteran player is like a brand new stan. For some reason, they'll probably only buy new cards if like a new brand new is reprinted or a new alt art for brand new is out. Meanwhile, a new player will have to like build out their catalog of cards to play in standard. So already from that, you know which one is more valuable, the guy who's going to buy more cards, right? Not the guy who's just going to buy the newest brand new card. Weird example, I know, but he's the first character that came to mind. But yeah, they also address reprints, so cards can be reprinted at any time, and if they are, they might come back into standard due to that. So just because a card rotates out doesn't mean it's gone forever. In fact, Bandai mentioned that a version of Nami in particular will be reprinted with a block 5 icon, which makes her standard legal again. All past printings of that card will also be legal too, as long as the new one is standard legal. So all your old copies of Nami will still be able to be used even if it says block 1 on it. There's also going to be an evergreen list of cards that will be legal despite any future block number updates. On that list at the moment is just every manga rare from block 1. They also explicitly said that manga rares will never be reprinted with an updated block number, but alternate art versions of those cards maybe. I'm guessing this is just to keep manga rares like valuable and not dilute their worth. Now, there's currently no set commitment or pattern for how they're going to handle reprints. They are currently just reprinting depending on whatever is relevant to any products that they plan to release, if it makes sense for that product to have a certain card. Now, here's where things get kind of questionable, kind of weird. I don't really like it, but Bandai mentioned how the PRB, the Premium Booster reprints, are affected by standard rotation. So PRB02, Premium Booster 2, will contain reprints with updated block numbers, but not all of the cards will have updated block icons, which means some cards will still get rotated out, even if they're being reprinted. Right, so being in a Premium Booster reprint set does not guarantee that the card will remain legal for future blocks. I feel like this is the most questionable decision, because like, why reprint cards that are going to get rotated out anyway? Right, what's the point of reprinting them? And then this was something that many people were misinformed about, and they kind of delusioned themselves into thinking like, there's no way Bandai would do that. Premium Booster 1 cards, they're probably safe. Well, yeah, they're not. This is the worst case scenario. Also, they admitted that this rotation concept has been in their back pocket for a while, and they only decided to actually implement it starting in 2026, and that's kind of why they had block numbers already onto the cards to begin with. Now here's where I have some criticism of my own personally. If this was something that was always a looming option, or like a foregone conclusion that they were going to arrive at anyway, why did they not tell us this from the start? Right, they knew they had plans to introduce a rotation system at some point, but they didn't tell us for 3 years. They just waited for us to buy all these cards thinking that they will always remain legal. So that's my one gripe with it. Right, if this is something that they have designed from the beginning, like, it's kind of scummy that they didn't give us a heads up that this would happen eventually. Because yeah, for a lot of people, it affected how they spent their money on this game. Like, for me personally, I was not affected by this at all, but I can feel for the people who might have been impacted due to this. But yeah, they also gave more information about the extra regulation format. It sounds like they're gonna support it pretty well. They'll have standard battles, flagship tournaments, and championships held in an extra regulation format. They didn't mention anything about Worlds, but I would assume Worlds would be in like the standard format, because that's like their premier competitive format. But yeah, in the end, these are events that are exclusive to Japan, so they didn't really disclose how they're going to handle it with the other regions, how they're going to handle extra regulation tournaments and events. But as far as Japan goes, it looks like, yeah, it's going to be supported pretty well. There's going to be prizing and events for it alongside standard regulation. And yeah, that's about all the information I could get out of the video, or at least what I could understand from it, at least from my elementary Japanese. I think overall this will be a good change for the game, but not without criticisms on how Bandai handled it. Right, I do think this is great for new players, and it'll allow them to balance the game a lot better, a lot easier. Financially, it's great for them too. But if this was something that was always planned, then yeah, I do think they should have told us this from the start. And also, if they knew all along, it's really weird why the entirety of Premium Booster 1 is Block 1 and will get rotated out. Right, that part still kind of befuddles me. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this change. Yeah, subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed. Check out my other videos. That's all I have for you this time, so thanks for watching. Bye.
Card Kaizoku.
Da-da-dee, da-da-da-da-da.